Add everybody back in, get this all resituated, and we're golden. How's everybody doing tonight? Welcome back after a very short break. Sorry I couldn't make it last week. It was a lot of last-minute prep. Get ready to take my family down to Florida to visit my dad, check out his new place, and do a little bit of fishing. And for anybody that saw it, Andrew posted he caught a tarpon off my dad's dock, which was pretty slick. The funny thing about that was we were taking turns letting the kids catch fish, and my youngest, it was his turn. Pulls the rod up, like I see it going off, give it to him. He's like, Dad, I can't do this. And Andrew had a hand on it. He's like, do I take it? I'm like, yeah, take it. And then Andrew fought that thing for 5 minutes, landed it. He was shaking like a leaf for the next 10 minutes because that's the fish he's been trying to catch his whole life, especially being down in Florida. Like snook and tarpon have been high on his list. So that was the highlight of the trip, but it was good. But now we're back. And we have a special guest with us this week, Dave Latendresse. Did I get it right?
Right. A+.
Now, of course, Sean Miller back yet again. We're going to talk a little bit about life behind the lens, which was Sean's idea for the topic. I like it. It's slick. It works. And we're going to talk to Jake and let him tell a lot of stories about life behind the lens, working for Bass, and a couple other things you do on the side. Maybe a little sneak peek into the backstory of how you came to get to this, and the other business ventures that you have on the side, or I should say business venture with that bar out in Colorado, which I'm very, very interested to hear more about. So that is the plan for tonight. I'm not going to go into anything else. We'll save it for another night because I just want to jump into it tonight. So Jake, honestly, dude, thank you so much for coming on here. My buddy TJ, Smallmouth Freaks on Instagram. I know a bunch of you guys know him. We've had him on here a couple of times. He spoke very highly of you. I know you two are good buddies. There is an echo. All right, we'll solve that in a minute. So, Jake, before we truly get started, why don't you take a minute and introduce yourself?
You said my name right. Jake Latendresse. I'm a field producer for Bassmaster Television. I've been doing that this is my 14th season on the Bassmaster Tour. And I've actually been a field producer and a video and producer and photographer for 27 years now, throughout different spaces in the outdoor industry. And I own a bar, like you said, and ironically enough, my bar is 116 years old today. Today is its birthday, and I'm out of town.
Happy birthday.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. I haven't owned it the entire time, but I've owned it for this coming July 1st will be 25 years, so very proud of that.
Holy hell, that's awesome. Mm-hmm. Question, are we coming through audio through you on speakers?
I've got my bone conductor headset on, so I'm listening to you that way. Is it an echo?
I can hear it. Yeah, there's an echo when either myself or Sean are talking.
Let me hold on. Can you still hear me?
I can still hear you, and there's no echo anymore.
We'll get these off and go through my computer mic.
You sound fine. Can you hear us just fine?
I can. Yeah.
There's just a little bit of.
I think you're okay.
Can still hear you. Kinda. Oh, you're a little quiet now.
That's better.
Is that okay?
When you're closer, it sounds better.
Check.
There you go.
Check. This is worse.
It's weird. There's like a slight lag when you start talking for the first second or so, and then it picks up your voice just fine. But there is a mean buzzing feedback coming through too.
1 second. Let me just adjust one thing then.
Take your time. Everybody here watching is very patient. Better take a few minutes to get it out of the way first. Be good.
We're just blaming it on Snover anyway, so it's all good.
Check. Yeah. Is that any better?
Oh, that's awesome.
Perfect.
No more feedback. We're good.
Okay.
And can you hear us fine?
I can hear you through my headset, and then I'm speaking through my laptop. I'm in a hotel in Okeechobee, Florida.
That's right, because you got to start work tomorrow. Well, another day of work.
Tomorrow morning, yeah.
Every day is a work day for Jake, So.
with kids at home, that's very true.
Yep. All right. Everybody's giving us the thumbs up in the chat, so that's good.
All right. So I will say before we get started, this show is going to be very it's going to hinge on a lot of questions from the audience as well, right? So Sean and I have some questions that we're going to ask Jake, but we definitely want to hear some feedback from those in the chat. Put your questions in there. Jake is an open book when it comes to this stuff, and he's willing to answer pretty much anything. So feel comfortable, asking those questions. And, this is kind of an opportunity for everyone to kind of immerse yourself in Jake's world and put yourself in his shoes, looking at bass fishing, competitive bass fishing, and kind of the outdoor industry through a different lens, through a different light. Not just what's seen on camera, but what happens behind the scenes and behind the camera. So, please do not be bashful. Ask away. And if he doesn't feel comfortable answering, he doesn't have to, but we're going to throw everything at him.
Absolutely.
We'll do our best.
So we're going to throw a softball one, because I myself am always curious about things like this too. I'm big on origin stories on anybody and everything, and especially for unique careers like yours. That's not something that just anybody can go and do. There's got to be a little bit more behind it to have that opportunity that you have had to be able to get into the position that you are, and then you got to be damn good at what you do to be doing it as long as you have been doing it. So satiate my curiosity and everybody else here, please. How did you get involved with bass? Like, what is that whole backstory?
Well, I have to take a step back before bass just to sort of intro into how I got involved in the outdoor industry in the first place. And years ago, back in the 90s, I was an adventurous ice climber, and I was ice climbing with a really good friend of mine who just happens to be really a mentor and one of the best ice climbers in North American history. His name was Mark Wilford. And I was taking pictures of him. He was an ambassador for the Patagonia apparel company. And I was taking pictures, color slides of him with analog cameras. And he just said, some of these are really good. You should try to submit these into some magazines. So in 1998, I'd submitted some color slides to a bunch of different outdoor apparel companies. And about a year later, one of my photos showed up on the cover of the North Face catalog. Oh, yeah. And at that time, that was a very highly coveted cover. And I had no aspirations of becoming a photographer or a videographer or anything. I was literally just taking pictures for him for his own usage and as an ambassador. And the North Face sent me a big box of goods and a nice fat check for a cover photo. And it just kind of boosted my confidence. So I used the money that I got paid for that photo, upgraded my camera, and just started shooting photos. And then as the hunting and fishing industry, I was a big fan. I have like 500 different videos in my collection at home that go way back into the VCR days, VHS days. And I was a big fan of the In-Fisherman, lots of different fishing, Bill Dance, the obvious old school guys that were doing television at the time, and thought, man, this would be really cool to transition and transform my extreme adventure photography skills into video skills and start working in the outdoor industry. So I had reached out to a guy named Jay Gregory in the whitetail bow hunting world, and he brought me on to his crew. So I started making whitetail hunting videos back in the late 90s and early 2000s. And one thing led to another. I was introduced to a lady that owned a television show called Water Dog TV, which was about Labrador retrievers in the waterfowl hunting world. And her name was Shannon Nardi. She quickly became very good friends to me, and she was my mentor as a producer and a storyteller. And she just happened to be the daughter of Jerry McInnes, who owned Bassmaster at the time. Yep. And so she introduced me to Jerry, her dad, her brother Mike McInnes, who is our primary director and one of the big shots at JM Associates, who does all the Bassmaster television productions. And he brought me into bass 14 years ago. My very first event was on Douglas Reservoir in Tennessee, and my very first assignment was Art Defoe on his home lake at Douglas Reservoir. So that's how I got introduced to Bassmaster television.
Is that when you knew that you were hooked? Was it after that first event? How long did it take you for them to kind of reel you in and keep you there?
I reeled them in, to be honest with you. I had been bugging Shannon for 4 years. I'm not bugging her. She was bugging JM. She bugged her dad. She bugged the people in the front office. She bugged her brother. And there was just no room because that was way before live. So at the time, they only ran 3 or 4 cameras on the water, and it was a post-production television show. And they had one aerial guy flying around in a helicopter, and that was it, other than the studio videographers. So when finally one of the guys quit or he got sick or something, and I was first on the list to come in as a substitute, so they called me in, and I was just so really overwhelmed with the amount of superstardom. And I mean, you're talking about the days of Denny Brower and Kevin Van Dam and Art Defoe and all those guys. I was shell shocked really around the weigh-ins and the camera trailer and all that. And again, one of my early assignments was Mike Iaconelli, and it was just sort of, man, I couldn't get enough of it. So, I told them how much I loved it and that I would be willing to work any events that they could fit me into. And so one of the guys, like I said, had quit. So they put me into his spot. And I think we were shooting post-produced television for a few years until we started experimenting with live. And at the time, we were using the phone cards, the USB phone cards that plugged into our broadcast cameras. And we literally did not have enough cameras on the water to cover everything because lots of those cards would go black because of the weak cell service and signals that we had. So we've gone through so much technology and so much trial and error to get to where we are today with our live broadcast. And it was just something that, I love doing. And as our live coverage became more and more popular, they added more people to the team. And now we've got there's probably 15 guys that float in and out of our circulation of camera guys. And we have 6 guys that cover every event 4 days in a row, and then 4 more guys that come in on Friday and Saturday to cover our Fox Live. So, that's sort of a quick rendition of the evolution of how we went from post-production into live and how fascinating that was for me and why I'm still around.
So were you kind of like a pioneer of the live broadcast for bass, or is there someone that's in front of you that you look up to that kind of helped you along, or are you the one that's driving kind of some of the changes in the technology and what's being broadcasted of what we see on a daily basis when the elites are fishing?
Yeah, actually, the genius behind everything is the entire JM Associates crew. We have, basically working for Bass and JM, they're all, Chase Anderson owns Bassmaster or BASS, and he also owns JM Associates. JM stands for Jerry McInnes Associates, and when Chase, the Anderson family, bought into Bass, they just bought everything. Yet the same production crew, the technicians, the gaff people,
Oh, he froze.
Uh-oh.
We'll give him a second. Hopefully he'll come back. In the meantime, while we're waiting on him, I have seen a lot of great questions and comments, and we'll get to them in a minute. Okay, Jake, you're back. We got you.
Okay. Yeah, so all the credit and all the brainchild and ideas come from the people, the talent at JM Associates. they've worked very closely for many, many years with ESPN, ESPN2, CBS Sports, and obviously now Fox Sports 1. And so they've really integrated lots of ideas from the larger networks that they've worked very closely with. And at the same time, they just have this extremely microscopic talent level at JM that comes up with these crazy ideas. I mean, during COVID, we were with ESPN2, and I think at the time we were drawing in about 180 to 250, maybe 300,000 viewers online on .com. I'm not sure exactly how many we had on ESPN2, but it was just, it was an hour show. And during COVID, because all the sports had canceled their scheduling and all that free airtime, or that airtime became vacated from live sports because of the pandemic, we got invited as a show to produce live television for our entire event from 8 o'clock in the morning until weigh-ins at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. So we were getting like 7.5 to 8 hours of airtime. And at that time, our viewership, I believe, don't quote me to an exact number, but I believe our viewership jumped into like 10 to 12 million viewers per day. And
wow,
that was a precedence,
awesome.
And it just really blew things up. And it came at the right time because it was right after the Major League Fishing flip. And so, it was like this magical, serendipitous, reaction and situation that we were put in. And then the following year, after 2020, we signed a big contract with Fox Sports 1, and I think we found a better fit there based on the viewership, and obviously that's where we live now. It's a great fit for us.
That's awesome. So as you're talking about this, I'm thinking about this, from my own personal experiences with the company that I work for and everything, and that evolution in progress, getting from to that next step. That it's a constant, ever evolving, just tactic and roadmap that everybody tries to follow, right? Like, you want to continue to grow, so there's always conversations going on in the background. How much are you involved, like, in more in-depth conversations of like, okay, guys, like, what can we look forward to trying to improve in different aspects of things if we go forward, year after year after year?
Yeah, most of that thought process and brainstorming goes on probably in the editing suites at JM Associates and in the offices of the different administrators and executives at BASS in Birmingham. And then they collaborate. I mean, Mercer has a lot to do with that. Steve Bowman has a lot to do with that. Obviously, Mike McInnes is a huge, he's really the decision maker there at JM. So there's a lot of really talented people. I don't think us as field producers offer much feedback. I do know that they do keep up with us on social media. They appreciate what we do and the exposure that we bring to the table. And I'm sure, Mercer and I talk a lot about on his podcast about different things. And I know most of those guys in studio watch the show. So, there's various levels of input, but I think the core of it all comes from the executives at the board of directors at Bass and the executives at JM Associates.
Nice.
They're
Okay.
they're brilliant people.
Yeah. We got some questions in the chat that I do want to get to, because there's some really good questions in there, and I'll just like pick away at a couple and then move on to another thing, pick away, and so on and so forth.
Sure.
But to your point about Mercer, like, he's one of the few guys that anytime I go fishing, his is like the only podcast I listen to. I love Mercer. Dude's awesome. I thought it was great when they brought him on board. He's just funny as hell too. I like Mercer, G-Man, Polnick. Like, those are my top three guys I would kill to have on this show. And I reached out to Mercer is the only person I haven't looked at. Been able to have a chance to talk to him. But man, I would love to just shoot the shit with that guy even for 5 minutes.
Maybe we'll have to follow it up. We'll have to strong arm Jake into getting him on the podcast. Just walk down the hallway to his hotel room, Jake. Let's get him on tonight. Let's go.
Let me text him right now.
Right.
Let me see what I can do. Let me see what I can do. Let me tell you something about Mercer. I don't get asked, this question very often, and I didn't think about this earlier, Sean, when you were asking me about some questions. But Mercer is who you think he is. He is a positive light in any background. He's always looking at things on his cup is always half full. It's never half empty. And even when I'm down, we talk personally behind the scenes. We hang out, go to dinner, have a drink, talk to each other on the phone. When he's in Canada, I'm in Colorado, and we talk about personal things. And sometimes, life is not always roses and veloments. And Mercer always has a positive outlook on everything, and he's one of those guys that I know when I talk to him, even if it's something personal and I'm not in the best of moods, literally when I get off the phone with him, I'm better. I mean, he's like the medicine that you didn't know you needed when you really need it. He is a great guy.
Would you say that he's the unofficial BASS therapist?
He's pretty close. He is pretty close.
Everybody needs someone like that in their life, and I think it's nice when you can rely on somebody like that, even when they're not always like, let's say, like a best friend, right? Like you got your best friend you can talk to like that. Then you've got someone that is just a really good friend that you can have something like that. I'm not sure what Mercer and you are, if you're like really great friends or just friends because of work and everything. Regardless, like being able to have somebody like that you can have that heart-to-heart with, and especially someone like Mercer, who you were giving me the impression, he's always given me the impression that he's just very level-headed, and he'll talk it through and rationalize things. Like, that's my favorite kind of person. I've got a few people like that, both really close friends I've known for a very long time. A couple of people I've met in the last few years. I've got that. One of my coworkers, Craig Cushman, just phenomenal person, big-time bass guy. He works for Garmin, and Jesus Christ. You name the business and fishing or hunting related, the guy's been in it. And it is wild walking around with him at ICAST because there's almost nobody there he doesn't know. To your point, it's nice having somebody like that, because you're right. Life is not always great all the time. That's just life. And it's nice that you have somebody, especially through work even, that you can talk to like that and be able to just talk it out.
Yeah, the first time I was on his show, there was no Jake's take. It was just he wanted to get a different perspective on his show about what it's like behind the scenes on a boat with a pro. And then it just turned into we were friends or business associates at the time, and over the past 3 years we've evolved into being very good friends. We talk during the off season, and he's just that guy, man. Mercer is exactly who you all think he is. There's nothing artificial about him. Everything is so genuine, and he doesn't have to think of something positive to say. He just thinks that way all the time. It's constantly perpetuating in his mind about positivity, and that's why he has 500,000 subscribers, or however many he has. I don't even know anymore. I lost track at 485,000. But that's the reason he's so popular, is because he's a people person. He always jokes about, he makes a living having a big mouth and a loud voice, and that's who he is. He's very outspoken. He's not shy to tell you what he's thinking, but somehow it always comes out positive.
Yeah, I was going to say I've met him a couple times now, one with you, and then kind of on the side as well. A couple of years ago, or last year down in Tulsa, I had an opportunity to kind of talk to him, and he's very knowledgeable about a lot of things, very, very well spoken, not afraid to talk about the polarizing topics in the bass world. But he does it in such an eloquent way as to not necessarily offend the masses, but to get his opinion across without offending someone else's. And that's what I kind of respect about him a lot, is his passion is very evident in everything that he does. And the interactions that I've had with him, to your point, has been I've never left going, that Mercer guy, I was just like, that he's such a great dude. And I was like, I want to drink a beer with him again, Yeah. So, well, a little bit better than Santa Claus, right? Because he's real, right? He's
true.
there. He's a person, and he's just a great dude. I mean, from my interactions with him, he's the type of guy that I want to just sit with in a room and crack some beers and just listen to stories.
He's very talented. His memory is unbelievable. How he literally knows where all the anglers are from. He knows most of their their background in terms of, hell, he knows how many tournaments they've won. He does his due diligence, and he's very, very good at what he does. And when they hired Mercer, they could not have picked a better employee, a better talent for the stage, and a better ambassador to the sport. He is everything that you think he is and more.
That's what I like to hear.
Yeah.
Well, we'll have to have him on the show at some point here soon.
We'll see what
I'll jump on his show. Whatever's easier for him.
Let's get into some questions. There's been lots of good ones.
I got it pulled up. So first off, Sean Place, thank you very much, new member. Appreciate you, buddy. IOU apparel that's coming in for the New Hampshire Outdoor Expo next week. We'll talk about that more next week. You also had a question. How bummed? You know what? Let's save that one, because I feel like it's gonna be a loaded topic. Let's not go down that path yet. That's all kind of just came up today. So my buddy Mark goes by Northeast Bass Fishing here on YouTube. Jake, how much does it suck not being able to fish and just watch these guys fish in all these Great Lakes?
I get that question a fair amount, and the simple answer to that, and the best answer to that, is that I go into learning mode. When I'm looking through my lens, I do get a different perspective. I'm on board, when you guys don't know what Taku's really using to catch giant smallmouth, I do. And so there, and that's a phenomenon, and that's really what I get out of it. I never feel like, man, I would much rather be fishing right now, because these guys are, even from the, I'm gonna say this because of a lack of better terms, but from the bottom of the elite list to the very top and most consistent pros, they're all really, really, really good at what they do. I mean, they're freaking. They would not be in the elite at the elite level if they weren't really good at what they do. And so I'm always, every day's different, because fishing's different, as you guys know. Every single day, the elements change, the variables change, the fish's mood changes. And so they're constantly adjusting to these different tactics to unfold what's going on and try to unlock that lock with a key that they don't even know that they have in their boat. And so it's constantly a learning process for me. And I take what they do, apply when I go home to go fishing with my son or my buddies or by myself. I'm always applying what we did this week into next week or the week after at home fishing, and it always works. So that's my answer to that question is, I instead of wishing I was fishing, I'm just glad there to be learning from those guys.
You were on the boat with Taku on the St. Lawrence when he won that day, right? You were on Taku's boat when he was speaking smallmouth, dragging up 6-pounders like it was his job, just having a hell of a day. What was that like?
Well, first of all, Taku became the Taku. He really came into the scene on St. Clair that year, and he was catching. He was using a really weird Japanese bait, and it was almost a micro bait. It was so small on a drop shot. And he was catching, I think he came in third in that event, but he was very close, maybe even swapping leads on the final day. And he came in third, but I remember he caught a smallmouth that had a lamprey eel attached to it. And he was freaking out because he didn't know what it was. And then I looked up on my phone how to say eel in Japanese, and I said it to him, and he goes, "Oh, can we eat Can we eat? And that, honestly, I believe that is when the Taku window of opportunity opened. And that's when his superstardom started to come out, because everyone fell in love with his innocence and his pure, his pure authenticity came out. And then, of course, I was, because of the way we interacted at St. Clair later that year, at the end of that year, when he won St. Lawrence, or maybe it was the next year. I can't remember. It may have been the end of that
I think
year.
I think it was that year, because I remember the video of him like, "What is this?" And I remember you telling him it's an eel, and he's struggling to pronounce it in English and thinking that it was the craziest alien looking thing in the world.
Yeah.
I do
Aryan,
remember that.
He called
yeah.
it an Aryan, yeah. And so, and let me back up too. The reason I was assigned to Taku at St. Clair goes back even further with bass, because my mother is Japanese and I can actually speak a little Japanese. And years ago, they would assign me to Takahiro Omori because he wasn't that comfortable on camera, and they put me with him on Wheeler when he won the Wheeler event years ago, and he was much more comfortable and much more talkative and had more character to him at that event when he won. And so from that point forward, they just started putting me with the Japanese guys because of that communication window that the channel that we had. So then when we went to the St. Lawrence River, I'll never forget, we pulled up to that, out in front of that lighthouse out in the mouth of Lake Ontario.
Yeah.
And Taku pulls up on his spot, and he's looking at his Garmin and he's going, what's wrong? He was scratching his head. And I said, "What's wrong, Taku?" And he goes, "I don't know. I'm on waypoint and it's supposed to be 22 feet of water and it's 13 feet of water." And he trusted his waypoint, so he just started fishing anyway. And as soon as he dropped his bait down, he catches a 5-pound smallmouth. And what it turned out to be was there were so many smallmouth under his boat, it had created a false bottom.
Holy
There was
hell.
like 500, a humongous school was swimming under us. And
That's
he caught 26 pounds in 40 minutes. And
Wow.
it was insane. And that's when we coined, I had a director, we're constantly wearing earbuds so we communicate with the live studio, the trailer in the studio back in Little Rock. And the director, was just saying, "Man, get him going." So I said, something like, "How fun is this?" He goes, "Oh, Taku boat's so much fun." And I'm actually the one that said, "It's like Disneyland." He goes, "Yes, this is smallmouth Disneyland." And that's how the whole smallmouth Disneyland thing was
That's awesome.
born. Yeah.
Sweet.
He is great. He's another one. In fact, at this point, I've never had one bad experience. No, let me take that back. I've had a couple bad experiences with anglers over the last 14 years, but nothing that wasn't reconciled behind the scenes and completely erased. And right now, I cannot tell you one single person that I don't get along with on this circuit, and anyone that's been in or out of the circuit over the past 14 years, all of these guys are just great guys. I know people have their different favorites, and sometimes things get said on social media or things occur on the lake and they start to get their characters questioned. But from my experience, I love all these guys, and they're really good at what they do. And they've always treated me with the utmost respect, and I have a ton of respect for every single one of them.
That's phenomenal. And honestly, it's perfect to segue. There's like two things you just touched upon, and this one from my buddy Gordy, 603 Wild, goes really well into that. There's another one, but so is that Taku's story the best story you have from a Bassmaster tournament, or do you have one that even tops that? Because that was fucking awesome, dude.
That was a very great moment. There's been so many. I mean, honestly, probably the top of, if I had a mountain of experiences, the summit would probably be being with Jason Christie when he won the Lake Hartwell Classic. And the backstory to that was even more significant to the story because I was with him in 2018 when he choked, and he choked a 6-pound lead, and Jordan Lee ended up winning his back-to-back classics then. And knowing at that 2018 classic at Hartwell, it was the very first time that we were asked to run a camera live in the vehicle from Greens Pond Landing to the arena, which is about 45 minutes away. And Jason, knowing that he blew it, he only caught 4 fish. He literally was, a pound and a half. He was a 12-inch bass away from winning the classic that year, and he only brought in 4 fish. And we all know what happened. He came in third, and I had to hold a live camera in his face all the way back to the arena, and it was horrifying. I mean, I was apologizing every time they switched cameras off of mine in the studio truck. I was apologizing to Jason. I'm so sorry. I know this sucks. I'm just doing my job. And we became, we kind of bonded then because he knew that I just had to do my job, and I knew that this was inappropriate for the most part, other than the fact that, live television is authentic and you can't hide what happens, and it is what it is. You win some and you lose some. And so to be back, and they purposely put me back in his boat in 2022 when he won at Hartwell, and to be in his boat from the very first takeoff on day 1 to the very last fish on day 3 in the championship, and to be front row in the media section to watch him, Kyle weigh his fish in and to come up a few ounces short of Jason's bag, or however that went, was exhilarating. And that has got to be the Mount Everest of my experiences with Bassmaster. But there's so many. Every win is outrageous. Every win that I get to experience with, whether it's Lee Livesey on Lake Fork, or Chickamauga, or Taku on the St. Lawrence River, or whoever it has been, even Brandon Cobb when he won Lake Fork during COVID, he couldn't catch. He caught so many 7 and 8 pound bass, it was unbelievable. So, all these experiences really just add up into a culmination of memories that I'll never forget.
That's awesome, man. God.
And you said something that kind of struck a chord with me. When you're on the boat with someone, and you said energy is infectious. When you talk to Dave Mercer, when you talk to Taku, you leave on a high. There's no negatives. It may be a difficult thing, but you get through it and you leave there, you're feeling good. Energy has to play a point. It's got to play a big factor in how well someone does, how stressed someone is, the decisions that they make, in real time, game time decisions. Life's on the line, right? The title's on the line, especially on day 4. How important is it to have the right camera guy in the boat with the top 10 fishing on the final day?
I mean, I think you can integrate that question into even the marshals or ambassadors, which is what they call them now. It's important to have. You're supposed to be neutral, right? So we can't assist doing anything. We obviously don't make suggestions because they know so much more than we do anyway. But the energy, even when I'm filming and someone catches a giant, I fist bump. I can't help it. And I remember the first time I did that when Takahiro Omori caught a 6-pounder on Wheeler on topwater, and that really solidified his win there. I'm a sports fan, and I'm a fan first. I would not be working for Bassmaster if I weren't a fan first. I grew up on Kentucky Lake. I've been bass fishing my entire life. I'm a huge fan of the game. All of them, Bill Dance, KVD, everybody. And so when something big happens, as a fan, the fan comes out in me, and I just can't help it. I raise my arms, or I fist bump, and I get jacked. I get really amped up, and I think that does feed into the angler. And a lot of times when they're not doing well, like the other day, on the St. Johns River in Palatka, I had Lee Livesey on day 2. He dropped a 23-pound bag on day 1. I had him on day 2, and he caught, I think, 5 pounds 9 ounces. He had 2 fish, and he couldn't do anything. Nothing he tried was working. And he and I, Lee's probably my best friend on tour. We talk throughout we've hunted together, we fished together during the off season, and even as close as we are, when things are going bad, I know when to be quiet. And that's really important too, because like I don't bring Doritos for lunch because I don't want them hearing me crunch the Doritos when things are going bad.
Just the awkward silence of like, would you shut up?
Peanut butter and jelly sandwiches for me, buddy.
One of those guys just like breaking off his 5th fish for the day, and then he's like, while he's sitting there like fuming, all you hear in the back is.
Hey, I will tell you this.
You need a Snickers, man. You're hangry. Have at it.
I've seen Taku get mad one time, and it was at Lake Fork, and we had obviously a marshal and a camera guy and the angler because of the catch and release format that the Texas Fest is, and the marshal had on Crocs, and the bottom of his Crocs were wet, and he had his feet crossed. He was sitting in the passenger seat, and his feet propped up on the corner of the deck, and every time he moved, his Crocs would squeak. God. Taku finally, he kept looking down, and finally he turned around and he goes, "Can you please stop? That is very annoying." So, that just goes to show, while these guys are very focused, when things are going bad, in anything in life, as we all know, when things aren't going well, we like to look to place blame somewhere else. So we're highly acute of all the different distractions that we have around us, and we like to point fingers. So I do my very best when things are not going well to just be really quiet, and I'm just a fly on the wall holding a big camera.
Like invisible, right? Like you want to be on a different wall.
Yeah, I would much rather be in a different boat but at the same time, you always, they always, there was a point last weekend when Lee turned around and he had 2 hours to go, and he just turned around, he looked at me and he goes, "I honestly don't know what the fuck to do right now." And so I'm a sounding board. I can't respond to that. I can't be like, right. Well, have you thought about this or whatever? I'm just a sounding board, and I think that's important too. When things are going well, you're high-fiving and celebrating in the boat, and when things aren't going so well, you're a sounding board, and they appreciate having someone else there to cry with, because it is what it is.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of crying, there's a segue into my next question. I'm sure there was multiple times too, right? Because like Taku's not known for being the best driver when it comes to boats and whatnot. But when was the time? Name the time where you were clinched the hardest, where you just wanted to cry, where you thought you were going to die in big water, and just like, all right, easy. This is the end on camera. What's
someone else asked that? I'm trying to find it.
Yeah. When was the time that you thought like, this is it? The good Lord, take me away. This is how I'm going to die. It's been a good run, guys. I'm out.
Okay, so I'm going to give you two answers to that question. The closest call I've ever had, when my heart stopped and I literally thought I was going to die, we were at Winyah Bay, and I was in Quentin Capo's boat, and he always has a fast boat. He likes to go fast. He's a good boat driver, but it's like being in a Formula One car with him, because he likes to go fast. And so we're going downstream on the Coop River, and we're going with the current. We're passing I think we hit 81 miles an hour, and we're passing everyone, and he came up on a boat, and I think he got a little too close to the back end of it, and when he jumped the wake to go around this guy to his left, we hit the wake and got a little bit sideways, and we literally skipped across the water like 3 times, and I thought we were going to roll. It scared the shit out of me. Like, I thought that was a very serious, even Quentin was like, oh, man.
Lay off. Did he lay off it a little bit, or did he get right back on it, Ricky Bobby style? For if you're not first, you're last.
He got right back on it. He was scared for a moment, and I was just, it was.
He was scared long enough to go, "You good? All right, cool. Let's do this."
Yeah, I think it was the current, the wake, the current, and the speed that all came together at one point, and that makes you realize. You just don't. The other day, I was with Shane LaHue on day 3 and 4 in Palatka, and there were 2 boats in front of us on day 3. And I've never, of all the times I've been, at takeoff, I've never had 2 boats in front of us in formation where the wakes behind the boats at peak weight met right in front of our boat. Where it was like two waves coming together, and we hit it, we centered it, and I saw it coming, and I've never seen that happen, and that kind of scared me actually, because you know how when you know what's going to happen when you're jumping wakes, or where you're crossing the wake of a boat in front of you or going the other way. You've done it so many times, you know how that feels. And for the first time ever, I'd never seen that before, and we hit it. It kind of took my breath away. So what it makes you realize is there's a split second that can get out of control, which it didn't at that time, and it even really didn't with Quentin. But there's a point where when you see other people have boat accidents and fatalities or whatever it might be, that there's a split second where something can happen and you can't do anything about it. It's totally out of your control, and you can't see it coming. And so, as a rider, a passenger in these boats, and for 14 years, I've never taken any boat ride for granted. That's my favorite part of day 1 of every event, because it just gets you going, and the beauty, the scenery, the sunrise, the fog, even the rain, whatever it is, it always produces these really cool memories that you have. But I never take them for granted, because we're going really fast in really high performance machines, and you just never know when something might happen. So I think about that a lot. The other time, the best boat ride story that I've ever been on was with Kyle Welcher on Lake Ontario when he won 2 years ago, when he won Angler of the Year. And people didn't believe me on social media. I posted that we were literally in 8-foot swells on Lake Ontario, and I got creamed on social media. Guys from Florida, all over the country, saying that's bullshit. There's no way a bass boat can handle 8-foot swells. And I posted a picture that I took with a huge wave about to crest behind us, and that's when everyone, literally all the criticism, went totally silent when I posted that picture, because that picture didn't lie. And even Welcher, like when we got out of it, when we finally got out of that mess, he was like, "Dude, are you puckered?" And I said, "Yeah."
Haven't stopped. That was like last year with Johnson, right? When he ran out to the big lake out of the St. Lawrence and was what did he, like, puked off the side, right? As he was fishing and stuff. I mean, that's no joke. You guys are out there in the best conditions. You guys are out there in the worst conditions, and it's your job to make sure that camera's on those guys at all times. And those guys are bouncing up and down, and like struggling to stay on the boat, and sometimes falling off and creating some funny bloopers. But for real, it's like, that's serious. That's life and death. And you guys are out there in some really dicey, terrible conditions, and it's your job to frame it in such a light that it makes it look like it's fun, right?
Yeah, I mean, that's we have to, we don't create drama, we capture it. And I was actually, last year I was with Jacob Fouts, and we were headed out onto the lake, and we were behind Chris Johnston, and he kept going, and we got maybe a half a mile out there, and Jacob was like, "This is not even worth it." and we could barely get turned around because the swells were tight. They were really, last year they were probably 5 footers, 4.5, 5 footers, if not a little bit bigger than that. I don't know. I don't go out with a measuring stick and measure how big they are. I just know when they're over your head and all you can see is water, that you're in big freaking water. And Jacob, he barely got turned around to go back into the river. It was so, and they have to make these decisions. And even Taku, when he won that year, I remember he is much improved as a boat driver since then, because he's got so much more experience. But I remember getting to the mouth, and it wasn't even rough out there that year. It was pretty calm. And he got to the mouth of the river. He put it neutral, and he had to take a deep breath, and he goes, "Okay, we go." Like he had been thinking about that for days, dreading going out on the big lake. But he got to the mouth, and he was like, "Okay, we go now." And he just motored out there, and he left after he caught his 26. He had 26 pounds, as I recall, and he still had a 2.5 pounder in the well. And he could have easily taken 5 or 10 more minutes and upgraded that fish, but he was so ready to go and satisfied with his bag, we left. And so, yeah, there's lots of decisions to be made out there, and my life is out of my control because I put it into the hands of the boat driver, and if they go, we go, and that's just the way it is. That's the nature of the beast.
Yep. No, dude, I hear that. And to your point about, when you said there was such big swells out there on St. Lawrence Lake, Ontario, and people were like, it's BS. The first time I went out was 2019. And the first day we got there was glass. And it was like half day, right? We got there at 2 p.m. We ran out, fished inside of Chameau Bay. And then next day it was glass. We're like, taking my 19-foot skeeter, we ran all the way out to Main Duck Island. We had like 3 or 4 footers for a couple hours, then it was fine. After that, the wind rolled in, and it came up out of the southwest. And I will never forget, like, we knew we were in big waves, and we were literally the only boat out on Chameau Island. And we didn't think to go up into the river because I only did all my research on the lake. That's what I wanted to fish. Like, we're going to try it. And we were in as protected a spot as we could possibly be. And there was one series of waves. I remember looking back at my buddy Andrew. I was like, dude, hold on. And all of a sudden I hear him go, holy shit, as I'm going up. And I'm like, my head is folding into my feet. And while I'm in a half crouch, I remember looking back down at the top of his head. I was like, oh, that must have been a 7-footer. Like, that was, and I ended up, that was the next day, it was just as bad. That was the first time I ever got seasick. And we had to call it quits early because it got so bad. And like, I didn't know what it was at first because I never experienced it before. And we get off the water. Andrew's like, you're getting seasick. I was like, okay. So I'm like, what do we do? He's like, we got to get on land. We went in and made my post for the end of the day. And a bunch of people give me shit like, oh, come on, man, you're on the lake. How can you get seasick? I'm like, you have no idea what it's like out here. You just don't understand how bad it can get. Like, Winnipesaukee, New Hampshire is big. It's 46,000 acres. And it gets bad, but not quite that bad. I've been on Champlain. What the worst was BFL last year. And coming back in, that was legitimate 6 and 7 foot rollers at one point. Because I remember coming up on the crest of one and looking way down in the trough. It's like, holy shit, what are we even doing out here? And the next day was even worse. But like, it gets, until you go out on Ontario, you don't know how bad it can truly get. It's like being out in the damn ocean.
No doubt. I was with Polinick when he won Champlain a few years ago. I think that was 2020 or 2021.
2020.
Yeah, 2020, and it was bad. We came back across. He fished till the last minute. He had 23 or 24 pounds in his well. He didn't realize. I mean, he thought he had 20 or 21 or whatever it was. He fished till the last cast of the last second that he thought he needed to get back. So he had to hurry back across the lake to get to the check-in. And I mean, we just got beat to death. That was when I think both of Seth Fighter's Humminbirds came off of his boat. He lost them, and then someone on the lake found both of his electronics. And then
and Humminbird offered him like $100, dude.
And
that was bullshit. Humminbird. Humminbird offered him like $100. People were auctioning it off for like thousands. We'll give you $4,000 for all the waypoints. And then I think Seth Fighter came through. I think it was Polinook fished with a dude in like some tournament and knew some dude who knew the guy that found him. Polinook linked him up with Fighter, and Fighter gave the guy like a free graph or something and got Humminbird to hook the guy up. But they were literally like, we'll give you $100 for the graph back. Fuck you, man. This thing was floating in 5-foot swells. I've got his map card with all of his waypoints and stuff. And like, that's a cool story. And all you had to show for it was $100. I think they made it right, but that was cool, man. But yeah, man, it's no joke.
Pretty wild. It was rough. To your point, you know, Champlain can get really bad. Every leg. I mean, I've been on Guntersville when it was just nasty. You know, they can. Any body of water with the right wind flowing from the long end to the short end can get really rough. So, yeah.
Yeah, that's ridiculous.
Wow. All right, we're going to rapid fire questions at you.
Not yet. No, because we've been talking like everything you've been doing for like work and stuff. And we didn't really get to touch much upon like really truly behind the scenes of you. And, you know, that's like something I always like to talk about too. And, so I'm curious, and I've got two questions. I want to hear more about the bar too, but like, you know, I know you're a father. You're on the road just as much. You're on the road a lot, and it's challenging trying to balance that with family at home. So I guess like how do you balance that? Because I will say that, like, inside of New England, I would say me and what this channel is fairly significant in the grand scheme of things in the fishing industry. I'm fucking nothing, dude. Like I have no reach. Like it's fine. I don't care. But I still get a lot of questions of like, dude, how the hell do you balance it all? Because it's tough, full-time career. And then I've got, you know, my two boys at home. My wife works evenings, most evenings. And usually now it's thankfully only until like 7-ish, but it used to be like till 8:30 when my kids were younger, when things were even more difficult. People are like, how the hell do you do it? It's like, I just make time. So I don't sleep is what it comes down to. But you're a much different case because you're gone for stretches. So how do you balance that?
It's a challenge. I mean, there's just no way around answering that question without using the word challenge. I'm a single dad. I got divorced 4.5 years ago, almost 5 years ago now. And it was much easier when I was married because there was someone at home taking care of the children. And while, you know, we share custody of the kids, she does have them when I'm on the road. But now this guilt trip, you know, of being gone all the time with 3 little kids at home is constantly looming over my head. And it's not just because I'm a dad, it's because I love my kids so much. Yep. And you know, that they're the most important thing in my life, hands down, period. And there's nothing even close, as you know. And so, you know, when I'm home, I'm actually home more. I used to travel and freelance all over the world. I've been to 49 countries filming, and every state, all the provinces in Canada, the Arctic Circle, and everywhere in between. And so I used to travel a lot more than I do now. And I've cut back on my travel time since I became a single dad. And that offers me the opportunity, especially during the off season. I didn't even work at all during this off season. I spent all my time with my kids. My son loves to fish. He loves to play football. He's a competitive boxer. My oldest daughter is in track and field, softball, and cross country. And my youngest daughter is into art, and she's actually into rock climbing now. So I'm constantly going from one activity to the other, shuttling my kids, helping coach, helping with homework, cooking breakfast, lunch, dinner, doing dishes, laundry, keeping the house clean. I mean, my mom calls me Mr. Mom. So, you know, I don't really know how I balance it. You just, as you know, as a parent, that you just find a way to do it, and you don't sleep much. I get between 3 and 5 hours sleep a night. And, you know, it is, I always look at it like I can sleep when I'm dead right now. My children are very important to me, and my career is important because that's what feeds my kids. And it also keeps me alive. If I didn't have this, I would probably be a sourpuss, dirty, rotten scoundrel, bitter at the world because I don't have any adventure in my life. And my dad and mom were world travelers. They were very adventurous, and it was instilled within me to do the same thing and to experience as much as you can in life. So I suspect that as a father, balancing the travel, adventure, and parenthood all in the same frame, that my children are picking up on that, and I would guess that they're going to be the same kinds of people. And I can't think of a bad thing about that because experiences around the world or around other people or adventurous things, there's nothing, you can't learn that in school. You can't be taught that. When you experience those things, you become more well-rounded in life, and you understand the world better when you get around like that. So to me, it's a good thing, but it's very challenging.
Dude, you just struck a chord with me emotionally, because you couldn't have said it better. And that perspective where if you have to do it because it's who you are. It is a big part of your soul. And it's not just sacrifice on your end, it's sacrifice on both ends. And, like as the kids get older, with just more experience and more time and seeing it and understanding, and as they go through their own experiences, and I'm speaking really for my own kids too, that I hope they come to understand the importance of why I'm gone every Sunday, why it's so important for me to be on the water, because I grew up with this. I've been in a boat since before I could walk and talk. My family is the single most important thing to me, and immediately on that level with that is fishing for me, and what it means for me, what it does for me spiritually. It is who I am. Everything I have done in my life to this point has revolved around fishing in one way or another. And I've had other interests, and I've done other things. I went into this career path, being a mechanical engineer initially because of like a different passion, but always understanding that somehow or in some way it would allow me to continue to fish or pursue something in fishing at some point in my life. And the only way that can happen is there has to be sacrifice on both ends. It's not just my sacrifice, what I'm giving up for my own personal health, what you were doing as well for the lack of sleep, but Jesus Christ, man, like I will do it 100% of the time, and I won't lose any sleep over it. I won't stress over it whatsoever because I fucking need to do this.
Yeah, that's one job. That's one job that you don't get to take a day, an hour, a minute off, right? Like you're always a dad. You don't get to hang it up. You don't get to take a weekend off. You don't get spring break. You don't get time away. Like you could be 1,000 miles away and you still have a job to do. So I definitely understand where Sean's coming from and what it means as a new father myself. I got a 15, almost 16-month-old at home, and, just kind of doing this and enjoying life and enjoying fishing and, even what you do too, right? Like you're out on the road and gone a lot more than both Sean and I. But at the end of the day, you never stop wearing that dad hat. So,
right.
Always.
So shout out to the families. Thank you very much for allowing us to chase our passions and our dreams. Very well said.
It's so important when you see anglers, you see anglers struggling with their families, and you see others have very successful careers, and it's usually the successful anglers on tour that have that the great fortune of success with families on the road, like Kevin Van Dam, Gerald Swindle and his wife are on the road together. The Poliniks are together. Carl and Kayla Jocumsen. The list goes on. When you see the successful teams, that's exactly why they're successful, is because they're a team. They're on the same page. Usually the wife is taking care of the administrative work, the taxes, the promotional events, the calendar scheduling, all that stuff. They're the administrator. They are the general manager of the team, and then the angler he's the doer, he's the builder, he's the creator, he's the talent in front of the camera, he's the promoter, and the angler himself. So those are the ones, and you can see it's clear as day. Those are the ones that are most visibly successful anglers on the road. I can't even tell you. I've done quite a bit of private work with Kevin Van Dam and Sherry and their twins, and I can't even begin to tell you how much work Sherry Van Dam does for Kevin. And Kevin is literally point A to point B to C to D. Like he has he's the busiest guy you've never met or that you have met. And his wife, Sherry, keeps him scheduled on point from point A to point B, no matter whether it's at ICAST or at an event, a TV show they're shooting, for the Kevin Van Dam or the Van Dam experience, whatever it is. She is the lifeblood of that team, and that's what it takes for those guys to be successful. My wife and I don't want to get into this too, personally and be a Debbie Downer. My wife and I didn't have that. She's a great person. We don't see eye to eye on very many things, but one of the things that we overlooked, she knew what she was getting into when we got married, because I've been doing this a lot longer than I'd even known her. And she knew that I traveled, but I don't think she really understood what it meant. And once we started having children, that became even more challenging for her, because that was the most difficult time in life, was when you've got, a 2-year-old and a 3-month-old at home. And before we even had our third kid, I'm on the road. I'm in Pakistan for a month filming, a big game hunt in Pakistan. She's at home taking care of 2 children, wondering where the hell I am when, one baby's shitting his pants and the other baby's vomiting in her crib at the same time. It's overwhelming, and I certainly don't hold that against her. I just know that you have to be paired up with the right mate if you're going to be married and you do this and you're going to raise a family. And 2 things that 2 very important people said to me, one of which is my business mentor. His name's Bobby Martin. He was the CEO of Walmart International for 29 years. He opened Walmart. He's been to 96 countries around the world. He opened Walmart all over the world when it left North America. And I asked him one time, I said, what's the key to being able to travel and be a father and a husband at the same time? And he asked me one simple question. He goes, when you come home from a trip and you open the door, is your family happy to see you? What's the reaction? And I told him, my kids just go, Daddy! And they run to the door and they're all hugging me. And my wife is sitting on the couch full of resentment because I haven't been at home. And that's when I knew what the reason why he asked me that question was because the only way you can answer the question to yourself is to look at your family and see how they react to you when you get home. It's like the old saying, if you want to know how, what true unconditional love is, lock your dog in the trunk of your car for a few hours and come open it and see what his reaction is. That's unconditional love. Do that to your wife and come back and you're going to get a completely different reaction. So, that's how I gauge it. And then the last thing is, my wife and I, when we were married, she was pregnant with our first child. We went to a parent counseling event, and it just happened to be that the counselor at this event was an old friend of mine from years ago. I hadn't seen her in 20 years. And I asked her after the event was over, she went through all these different scenarios, these different formulas and how you have to treat your wife and how your wife has to treat your husband and all that, everything in between. And I asked her name's Tony, and I said, Tony, like, what's the secret to all this? And she just looked at me and she goes, just love your kids. Just love your kids. And it's not just about just showing up and embracing, your children. Just love your kids, and then everything else will work itself out.
Yep. Yeah. God damn, dude. You have
you hit a nerve though too, right? And like even just outside of the families, right? Like, and I see it you see it kind of behind the scenes on the Elite Series too. It's not just the immediate family; it's the family that you travel with too. And a lot of the anglers travel like carnies with their group and their posse, right? Like it's the you got guys who stay at the hotels, you got guys that stay at the campgrounds, but they're always there for each other, and it's not just husband and wife or boyfriend and girlfriend or fiancés, right? It's other anglers, and they become one big family, and that's the one thing that I've seen just being around it a little bit and being around you guys, is it's a big family, right? It can be dysfunctional at times. It can be a love-hate relationship. You can hate each other and beat each other's throats, but at the end of the day, you guys travel around the country day in and day out, week after week with these guys, and you become a family of carnies, essentially, that travel the country and have each other's back and help each other out. So it's pretty special to see.
Yeah.
Bill Lowen, the Lowen family, that's a group of people that needs to be recognized for what they do. They've homeschooled their children, and Jennifer handles all that. Bill's the angler. I mean, it took him 16 years to win a blue trophy when he finally did at Pickwick a few years ago, and the quake and the emotional bearing that had on his family resonated out into the rest of the family. I'll never forget Paul Nick jumping up on stage and hugging Bill after he hoisted his first blue trophy, and so and he was very challenged in his approach to the forward-facing sonar era. It ate him up, and it affected him last year. And I think he's a very good friend of mine. I love the Lowen family, and it was challenging for him. And to see him win last week at Palatka was phenomenal, because he spent a lot of time in the off season studying and practicing and going through his due diligence on front-facing sonar, because he finally gave into it. He finally said, look, you can't beat this. You cannot beat this situation. It's not going away. You either face it, you either embrace it, or you don't. And he finally came to terms with the fact that he was going to study this. He was going to figure it out and understand, when he needed to apply it and to make it work to his benefit. And lo and behold, the first tournament of 2025, he didn't even need it. He goes out and fishes, the way he wanted to fish, and he wins this tournament. And the end of that tournament was unbelievably exciting. I was with Shane LaHue when he caught that 7-pounder and that 3-pounder on the bed to like I'm sitting there going, Shane didn't know what was going on. I'm going, oh my God, Bill's only got 3 fish at the time. I'm going,
do you get to see what other people have? Like,
oh, yeah,
obviously they tell you, right? Because I've marshaled, right? And they tell you, don't log into Bass Track, don't use it, don't take a look at it, because every angler wants to know, how am I doing? Am I sucking? Where's everyone else at? Who caught last? Who's got big fish right now? Where are they?
They see a boat going across the lake, and they're like, "Oh, he's moving because he's not doing well," or what?
Or something. They all have their own superstitions, right? They have their own thoughts. But
when they go live, they're thinking they overthink it, because when they go live, if I say, "Hey, you're live in a 4-box," that means there's 4 anglers on the screen at one time, just like we have a 3-box now, and they overthink it and they go, that must mean that I'm in the top 4. Or if they're not live for 2 hours, they're like, oh, that means I'm sucking and everyone else is doing well. When the fact of the matter was, my live feed was blacked out because I had bad cell service. Or the only reason why we had 4 of the guys that we had on there is because those were the only 4 cameras that weren't moving from one location to the next. So those are the only. There's so many different variables as to why one camera goes live to another. And yes, we do have the number 1 and number 2 anglers, on the screen in a split screen sometimes, just to go head to head when it's highly competitive or really close. But that's not always the case. So they're always thinking about, where they sit. And like you said, you have to be neutral and you can't mention it. But I'm listening to the director's studio constantly, and we're hearing what Mercer's saying. Plus, I do have the ability to check Bass Track because I'm punching in the weights into Bass Track, and I have to check it to make sure that weight logged and that it updated after 5 minutes. So, when that was all going on, I'm going, oh my God, this, and I'm sitting there going, I have to be poker faced because I can't indicate what's going on, and I'm just sitting there going, oh my God, this is insane. Anyway, to get back to the family situation, the Lowen family has got it dialed in. Jennifer and Bill are an amazing couple, and their whole family's involved. They homeschool. They've got it figured out, and to end this part of the conversation, congratulations to Bill and the entire Lowen family because you guys deserve it.
It couldn't have happened. So it couldn't have happened to a better person, right? And like Dan Kenny's in the comments here with Northeast, the New England Bass, the New England Fishing Expo here. And Dan's done a lot here for the Northeast and putting on a fishing expo every winter. And Bill Lowen has been kind of a staple for a few years, at the New England Fishing Expo. And I will say, meeting him and talking to him, nothing is more important to him than the present. And he treats everyone as if they're the most important thing. Never once like, hey, I got to go. Let's hurry up and take the picture. You don't feel rushed. He sits there and he talks to you and levels with you. And he meets you where you're at. And instead of trying to drag you up to his level. And he's just a great, genuine dude and someone that, I think a lot of the guys up here in the Northeast have come to love and respect. And, Dan Kenny's had him for numerous years at the New England Fishing Expo and hopefully for some more. So, we're stoked for him. It couldn't have happened to a better guy, like you said. So,
agreed.
Human being.
Yeah, I had the opportunity to meet him twice. Once at the New England Expo, and I got to speak to him for a few minutes. I went up and did one of the first tank seminars I've ever done. Shook like a leaf for like 2 minutes, and then I was fine after that because I realized this isn't like high school or people like hate me or love me or whatever. Like literally everybody here wants to talk fishing. I'm talking to my kind of people. That's fine. And like I got done with it, and I went by, and he was like, "That great job." Holy shit, Bill Lowen fishing. That's awesome. And I ran into him in 2020 up on the St. Lawrence River. He was up there with his whole family, and we were coming in as he was going out. And just got to shoot the shit with him for a few minutes there. And he was just, this whole family is phenomenal. Very, very nice people. To your point about Kevin and Sherry, I got to meet them at ICAST 2 years ago, 2023. And we're walking out of a steakhouse because we were there for to meet with our customer. We were doing this big celebratory things. We were kicking off a new product launch for them. And I'm the last one out. I'm holding the door for everybody. And I see two people behind me coming up quick. I'm like, wait a minute, hold the door. And, someone was talking to me as they were walking out. And then I hear, thank you to whoever it was behind me. Caught up. I look back. I'm like, whoa, that's Kevin. Damn. It was Kevin and Sherry. And that was like the only time. And it's one of two times where I was like starstruck because it was Kevin Van Dam, right? Like I've known fishing my whole life. I love fishing. I've watched all the tournaments, read all the magazines. So Kevin Van Dam in the flesh. And like he walked and like waiting on the valet or something, and I'm like, my boss Jen was like, "Who's that?" I'm like, "It's Kevin Van Dam." And Craig knew. And he's like, "Yeah, Kevin's a great guy. You should go say hi." I'm like, "Oh, I can't go say hi." He's like, "Just go say hi." I did, and I was like, I felt like a total fangirl, but it was cool to meet him. And then last year I got to meet Zone, and it was the same thing. And that was just funny as shit because he was great to talk to, and I'm like way off track, but it was just a funny story. And he sat there talking to me for a few minutes, and I'll never forget this. And he was like, "Wait, remind me again," as he's walking away. He's like, "You said you're from New Hampshire?" I'm like, "Yep." He goes, "You a Patriots fan?" I'm like, "Yep." He's like, "F Tom Brady, go Lions." Vikings. And he left. It was funny.
That's Zona.
Yeah, it was Zona's another guy.
He's a riot.
Anyway, I really digress. One last point, and then because I realize it's getting late and you've got work tomorrow. To your point about family, you really struck yet another emotional chord with me because you're right. Like it's you can't do any of this. I mean, forget, like, I'm not the pro level. I'm not a pro. I have a lot that I do with this, with Real Northern Bass and everything, and especially the expos, now that it's gotten to a thing where, like, I'm seeing a ton of my own support there, and, like, my career is still extremely demanding. It is hard to even do something as relatively significant yet simultaneously inconsequential as just getting together some apparel to do a 3-day expo that's an hour from my house, or this next one is in my hometown. It's 2 minutes from my house. It kind of can't get any easier, but dude, it's a lot. And then being at the show, it's still mind-blowing how many people show up to talk. And I'm extremely grateful for it, but, like, I could not do any of this without my wife. And now even my kids are getting involved, especially my oldest. Like, he helped so much at the show last year, and then the most recent New England Expo. And, like, if my family wasn't helping me with any of this, and especially my wife with the amount of shit that she does for me behind the scenes, like, I've recently started joking that she's the president of everything that I do. Mm-hmm. I would have walked away from this probably 6 months ago, because it's gotten to a point in my career, and then, like, both the trajectories on these are going up and relatively fast, and I'm like, how the hell do I keep doing this? Like, one of these has to go, and I don't really make any money from this, so I'm like, ooh, this might be the end of this, because I can't continue to conquer and divide the way I used to. My wife didn't want to see that go away, so she stepped up to help me to alleviate a lot of those things for me to continue to do this, because of how much I enjoy doing it. But she knows what it means to be able to just continue to further involve myself into the bass fishing community in any way that I can. It means so much to me. So you're right, Jake. You're 110% right. Like, the people that can really succeed at doing a lot of this is because you've got that kind of support at home. And I go away even just for a few days for fishing. All three of them come to the door. That's all, yay! And it means so much to me.
But that's your family. That's your friends that are family, and that's your friends that help support you. All around, right? Like we talk about this all the time, Sean, and Jake talked about it too. Like that's all of us banding together to help each other's passions. Continue to be fueled on a daily basis, to be able to continue to do what we do, love our family, and be able to carry on. So enough sad stuff, enough family stuff. That was awesome. We appreciate you being vulnerable. We're going to rapid fire some questions here out of the audience here, because there was a lot of good ones here.
Yeah, I've got 15 starred. We'll see how many we can get through. So Michael Bradley.
And if you got to jump, then we'll jump, Jake. But let's try to get through as many as we can.
Yeah. I'm good, yeah.
All right, Michael Bradley. What strangest thing Jake has witnessed filming an event? Ooh, what is the strangest thing you ever filmed?
The strangest thing?
Yeah.
The strangest thing was probably, I'm not going to say who, but having to be on the boat with someone when they have to go poop.
Okay. Someone asked about that too. That was a separate question. That was a separate question.
Yeah, that's a bit awkward. And I don't know if you guys remember or watched, but I did a podcast with Mercer, a whole podcast dedicated to an upset stomach that I had with Daisuke a few years ago at Chickamauga, when I actually had to jump in the water. I was holding it all day, and I had a severe upset stomach, and I held it all day until I could not hold it anymore. I was either going to shit my pants or jump in the water, and I've just barely made it into the water. Yeah, so
I was right here, Tom Stang. And I say, hey, we're gonna have your buddy Jake on. He's like, ask him about the time he jumped in the water.
There you go.
So
thanks, Tom.
You had mentioned that there was a question that Tom wanted. Our friend Tom, Smallmouth Freaks, wanted Sean to ask today, and we didn't even have to. Thank you for being so forthcoming with your stories that we didn't even have to draw it out of you.
I have nothing to hide. We're all humans, right? And sometimes things just happen.
If it'll make you feel any better, I have a lifelong history of stomach issues, and there's a bunch of hereditary things in my family, and like I am always needing to be near a bathroom. Since I started doing keto on a more regular basis, it's just fixed so many things. But every once in a while, I'm like, Andrew and I be driving up somewhere, we're like bubble gut, like I don't know if I'm gonna make it to that next restroom. And I'm always, for years, I've been saying, you know what, not a problem. I'll just It's dark. Like, what does it matter? I pull over anywhere. I'll just sit on the tongue of the trailer like a toilet and just, do my business. It finally happened. My last trip out of the year, last December, I couldn't make it. I had 15 more minutes to go. I'm like, I ain't going to make it 15 more seconds. Pulled over, took care of business, called Andrew. It's like, dude, guess what finally happened?
That's why they run the leash, man. It's not only for stumps. It's to hold on to the outboard when you got a shit.
Yeah.
When I jumped in the water with Daisuke, I was holding on to the power pole, and to summarize the situation, I was about to jump in the water. Like it was serious. Like it wasn't funny anymore. Right. And I looked at him and I said, Daisuke, I have got to go to the bathroom. And he says, what? I said, I have to go to the bathroom. He goes, what? I said, I'm about to shit my pants. And I just started taking my clothes off, and I jumped in the water, and he goes, oh, okay. I said, just keep fishing, because he was flipping his blowdowns along the edge before you get into the no wake zone going into the harbor at Chickamauga. And I was literally like the power poles. He was trolling along, and it was creating this eddy behind the boat, so everything was coming back to me, and I was splashing it away from me. It was one of the funniest things I think so that's the answer. I didn't get to film that, fortunately, but that was probably the strangest thing I've ever had to do on the water.
Love it. All right, next. That's awesome.
Actually, I'm now really curious about this. Kevin wants to know, do you have any good Karen stories while filming?
Yeah, there's always someone at the dock. There's always someone at a private dock, screaming at, the person you don't want to scream at is like Ike and Ellie, or, someone that's not bashful, because we all know these are public waters and boat docks are fair game. None of those guys ever intentionally want to hit a boat. They certainly don't want to. They're not there to damage anyone's boat, and I've never seen anyone damage anything on any private dock or any public facility or anything. So, you've always got someone at an event here or there that wants to come down and tell the angler that they can't fish around their boat dock, and those are probably the loudest Karens that I recall in any event or just in bass fishing in general.
Yeah, and it doesn't matter where you go, you run into it. My most popular video I actually pulled down because I got tired of the crap it was bringing up. I had a situation like that, and I didn't blow up at her. I just calmly explained, like, I'm allowed to be here, and and she's like, I'm gonna call police. You know what? Go ahead. I will call them for you. And I got 1.5 million views on that stupid ass video before I ended up pulling it down. I'm like,
that was Winnie, right? I think I remember that one.
Yeah. She was just an idiot, but they all are. So.
Well, everybody wants to help too. And these aren't necessarily Karens, but I can't remember who I was with, but we were fishing boat docks. It might have been with Edwin Evers. And he was literally, he told me, he goes, we get around this dock, there's a submerged lawn chair that's underwater that I saw a big one on. And so he's about to go fish it, and this guy comes down and goes, hey man, I dropped a lawn chair out there a few years ago, and there's a big 6-pounder that lives right beside it. And all of a sudden now he can't fish it because that guy comes down and says that. So,
that one hits home, especially given the current events. I will tiptoe around that one.
Sure.
But yeah, that's unfortunate right there.
I'm saving that for dead last because I don't know how long it's going to take, and I'd like to get through some of these other ones first before we get on that topic. Kevin, a really good question. What's the biggest bass you've ever captured on film during an elite event?
It was an 11-1. I was with Brandon Cobb when he caught the 11-1 on Lake Fork in 2020, I believe it was, when he won that tournament. That was a giant. The water was muddy, and it was a late spawner, and you could see her tail coming up just barely in the shallow, right in this little reed patch. And he kept flipping to it. He must have fished for her for 20 minutes. He kept flipping in there, and he thought it was a 5-pounder. And when she finally got it and he set the hook, it looked like he set the hook in the dock. Like, it would just, dong! And I remember hearing the braided line just singing like a guitar string. And then this fish came out and it came to the surface, and I went, oh my God. And he ended up landing it. And up until Hamner's 11.7 last year, that was the biggest fish ever captured on live television, biggest bass ever captured on live television, until Hamner caught that one last year.
That's awesome. I didn't know that. That's phenomenal. Mike Bradley again. Favorite angler to share a boat with?
I don't know that I can answer that question, because I have some really good friends over the years. I mean, Lee Livesey's my best buddy on tour, like, because we do stuff together, we communicate, we hunt, we fish, all those things. But you know, I love being with Jason Christie. Brandon Polinick is irreplaceable. He's probably the nicest, most sportsman-like ambassador to the sport, and he treats everyone with so much respect. He has so much respect for the game. I love being in the boat with Brandon. Obviously, the things that you learn when you're in the boat with Kevin Van Dam. One guy that he gets mentioned a lot, but I'm going to say it because he probably doesn't get mentioned enough, is Greg Hackney. He's probably the most, in terms of just pure bass fishing knowledge. He is an encyclopedia, and he and I get along really well. We have a blast. He is an entertaining individual and an extremely unique person in his own way, and I love being in the boat with Greg Hackney.
Nice.
I drew Greg Hackney as a marshal on Lake Champlain a couple of years ago. So my first day pairing was Austin Felix, which was awesome. Austin's a really good dude, very, very soft spoken, like doesn't say a lot, but like once you crack the shell, he opens up a little bit, and Austin was great. And I got paired with Greg Hackney for the second day, and the second day was canceled because of the weather. And so like I got to spend the rest of the day going, holy shit, tomorrow I get to be on Greg Hackney's boat. And it was like I don't know what to say. Like Greg Hackney is like Greg Hackney. Yeah, holy shit, this is Greg Hackney. Like he's another one of those guys that like a KVD that has been around for so long, and he just has this, like, you feel like he has this aura around him that is Greg Hackney. Like, I don't know what to say. Do I shut up? Do I talk to him? Do I say hi to him? Like, he's such a cool, down to earth dude, and like the laughs and you know, for me, memories, right? He's like, he probably doesn't remember who I am, but you know, the memories that we shared together, and the laughs that we had together, you know what I mean? Like some of the stuff that happened when we were out on Lake Champlain was unforgettable and really, really cool. You know, he was a really cool dude to kind of be around. So
he doesn't change. There's no variation to Greg Hackney. Hell, I was in a bar with him one night at ICAST 2 years ago, and we just were chatting about various things, experiences and moments that we shared, and even got into some Major League Fishing conversation, you know. And I'm pretty sure we had 5 or 6 too many drinks together, and I needed a wheelchair to get back to my room, and he literally got up and walked away from the bar like he hadn't had one single drink. Like he has no variation in change whatsoever, regardless of how many cocktails he's had or how long his day was on the lake, good or bad. Greg Hackney is the guy that you see, and he doesn't change a bit. He is an incredible. It is an incredible experience that as you well know, you've been in the boat with him. He's an incredible. He is an experience to be in the boat with, for sure.
Yeah, I mean, there was a point in time, and I won't blow up his spot, but we were traveling through the inland sea, and he kindly warned me to get my head down as we met some cormorants on the inland sea, and that was a memory, you know, to me. He just kind of looked at me with a smile on his face and like kind of a shit-eating grin, and that was something that I'll always remember with Greg. But he was super cool to be on the boat with, for sure.
He and Jason Christie, those are two people you'll never, ever find fishing around other people. they always are isolated. They find these key spots based on their skills and knowledge and experiences, and they always find an isolated place to go catch big fish. And that's one of the things that you really enjoy when you get to be in the boat with them, is that you're always going to be doing something different than everybody else is doing.
Yeah, that's awesome. I'm going to piggyback off of Mike's question and ask, because like for me, all my fondest memories, my favorite times about fishing is like, even on a bad day, good day, bad day, doesn't matter. It's somebody I'm laughing my ass off with the whole time. What angler do you fish with where it's like just nonstop laughs just because you two are clowning together? Someone asked a very similar question.
Probably Hackney.
Glass clown. Who's the glass clown?
Hackney. Lee Livesey and I keep going back to Lee because we're such good friends. We always have a blast. And he's totally himself. He always is. But, you know, he knows, I mean, we both know where we stand with each other. And so going on the lake with Lee is always, it's always a shared experience and a friendship, because he can be himself. Like he turned around the other day at Palac and he's like, you know, I don't know what the fuck to do.
Yeah.
You know, and I don't know that he would have said that to a marshal or an ambassador in the boat, because he doesn't know that person. And so, you know, there's just definitely a special bond, and we cut up quite a bit, and he's not shy to say things around me. But Greg Hackney is always clowning. You know, he's very serious and he's acute to what he's doing, but he likes to clown around and crack jokes, and you know, he's always funny, and he's always got some line that he comes up with when he goes live and he catches a big one, like "stand down" or whatever it is. He's always a character.
Was it Kyle Patrick that fell in the lake trying to like?
Yes,
step
last year. That was last year.
I was in Lee's boat. Where was that? Was that Lake Murray?
I think so.
I remember we pulled up to this point, and Kyle is already pulled down on this point, and they're waiting on the schools of herring to come by and start fan casting out in the school. And so Kyle's like up on the front of his boat, and he's going to lean down like Mr. Cool and put his foot up on the trolling motor mount, and he wasn't looking down, he was looking at Lee, and he missed.
Yep.
And his foot went off the boat, and of course, you know, the center of gravity just took him over, and everyone thought it was staged, but I can promise you it was not staged.
That was the tournament that he was dubbed the fruit bat.
That's when Zona called him. He was hanging upside down on that cable like a fruit bat. Yeah.
Kyle, because I know Kyle, right? Like through Douglas Rods and stuff like that I've done, you know, that I work with and you know, on a daily basis, basically at this point. But Kyle's another guy who's just super genuine, down to earth, always laughing, always joking, like super funny guy. And his energy, like, I don't know how people keep up with him. He is just constantly on the go, man. He is like, dude, Red Bull, if Red Bull had a spokesperson on the Elite Series, it would be Kyle Patrick, because he's like the Energizer Bunny. Dude doesn't stop, and he's like 100 miles an hour all day long until he crashes. And then like you got to drag his ass out of bed and get him up, and then he is 100 miles an hour until he crashes again. He is he's another great dude. So that's awesome.
If you went through the list of 94 anglers this year, you could take any given year and go through this list of all the anglers, and with someone who's been around all of them, and you could characterize each one of them, and they all have their own personal character. Like you said, Austin Felix, he's very stoic, and he has an extremely dry, almost a Stephen Wright sense of humor. And then you take someone, and here's another one we haven't mentioned yet, two guys, you know, Seth Fighter and Matt Robertson. I mean, those guys are just freaking characters. And Matt Robertson, I mean, he puts on a show sometimes, but he is that guy. I mean, the first time I was in the boat with him, he catches like, I think we were on Wheeler, it was Pickwick. and he caught a 4.5 or 5 pounder, and he's looking for the fish choked his bait. I think he was throwing a Carolina rig, and he just choked it, and it was deep down in his throat, and he couldn't find his pliers, his needle nose pliers. So he grabs the first thing on the floor of his boat, on the deck of his boat, and it's a rusty set of channel locks. They're like, the medium size one, like this big. And we're live on TV, and I'm zoomed into this worm in the fish's throat, and he's literally de-hooking the fish with a pair of rusty channel locks. He doesn't know how funny he really is when he's not trying to be funny.
Daddy handed those to him like when he came out of the womb with a pair of, it was like a pipe wrench. It was like, here you go.
They were in his mouth. They were in his mouth like a rose when he came out of the womb.
Oh, that's awesome.
He's fun to be in the boat with too. He's pretty funny.
Yeah. Oh, there's a lot of these guys that love to just hang out with. Okay, 2 more, and we'll save the most obvious one for last. But Aaron had one, and I'm gonna elaborate on this a little bit myself. So he specifically is asking, which rookie has surprised you the most so far? And Rocky Top for the win. I'm gonna elaborate a little bit on his behalf. What rookie has surprised you the most so far in the last 2 seasons? So far this year, I mean, with only one event, but also last year, and not just fishing, from the whole package, how they present themselves, I guess, what their overall attitude is, like the whole 9 yards.
I would have to say the most impressive rookie, and I've known him for a while because when he was fishing in college, he contacted me about doing the creative content for his school, his university. But Logan Parks is one of those guys that he already knows what he's doing. He's very intelligent. He's extremely organized. I mean, he was the president of the Auburn Fishing Club when he was at Auburn University, and he knows how to run his operation like a business. And he's a very good angler. He obviously did really well last year in the AOI standings. He's just, eventually he's going to win a blue trophy. There's no doubt. But I would say the most impressive, I wouldn't say surprised because I knew him in college, and when he and Tucker Smith were fishing together. In fact, I covered Tucker when he won one of his national championships in high school, so I've known those guys for a long time. But I would say the biggest surprise that I didn't know much about, and it is aligned with the whole Rocky Top for the win thing, is Robert G. He is known to his peers at that age class of anglers up and coming in the pro bass fishing world. Like, all of his peers will tell you he's probably the best front-facing sonar angler that there is out there. He is as good as it gets. He knows what he's looking at. He knows how to execute it when he sees what he thinks is a big fish. And he's obviously, last year he had a phenomenal year last year as a rookie. And I'm going to leave some of the other guys out because there's some controversies out there that would suggest otherwise. But as far as a pure angler goes, both traditional and front-facing sonar in the new era of bass fishing, Robert G surprised me because I met him at the college bracket his senior year in college. I didn't cover him. I just met him because his family was wearing all this Tennessee gear, and I'm a big Tennessee fan. So I met him there, but I didn't really know much about him. And he had a very impressive showing last year in the big picture.
Nice. That's awesome. That's what I
like to hear. Before we get to the last question, I hear Rocky Top, okay, Rocky Mountains, Fort Collins, Colorado. Talk to me about this bar. We didn't ask you about the bar. Real quick, let us know, why do we have to come to the bar? When can we meet you down there? Because you posted on there and you said, if you're ever at the bar, let me know, and I'm going to come down there and I'm going to share a drink with you. And I hope one day to, you and I have spent some time together outside of your daily life, but I'm looking forward to sharing a drink with you sometime in Fort Collins, Colorado. So talk to me about this bar here. How the hell do you come to own a bar? Why this bar? Quick, short, doesn't need to be super in depth, but talk to me about this this bar, and happy birthday to the bar, by the way.
Thank you. So I transferred from the University of Tennessee out to Colorado State University years ago, many years ago. And my first job in town was at a big bar, but one of the assistant managers there, who was from Arkansas, that I obviously had a cultural connection with because we were both from the South, took me to this bar called the Town Pump. That was 34 years ago. And it's just an old small saloon like you would see in an old Clint Eastwood movie. It's very small. It's 116 years old today. It's in downtown, the heart of Old Town Fort Collins. It was born on February the 26th, 1909, and I bought it this coming July 1st will be 25 years that I bought it. And really, I just started working there because I had to work to support myself through college, and that was one of the jobs that I had. And it's like the Cheers of Fort Collins, Colorado. It's the oldest bar in Fort Collins. It's one of the oldest bars in the state of Colorado. And I just happened to be there. I was bartending there for 11 years when the owner decided he was going to sell it. And he gave me first right of refusal because he knew that if I bought it, I wouldn't change it. And that's part of the nostalgia of a bar like that. It being so old, you don't want to change. You don't want to try to fix something that's not broken. So I've made a few changes here and there in the 24 and a half years that I've owned it, but not very many. We almost lost it during COVID. As you all know, bars and restaurants were at the bottom of the totem pole. I was 17 days from going bankrupt, and we started a GoFundMe campaign. And in 3 days, we have so many fans of the Town Pump all over the world. In 3 days, we raised $116,000.
Wow!
And literally, we need to get from February of 2020, February of 2021 to June of 2021. We weren't quite fully open yet due to the pandemic and all the restrictions we had in Colorado. And that GoFundMe project literally saved the Town Pump. And now we're back on track, doing really well, and have since we reopened. And today's its birthday, so happy birthday to the Town Pump. I don't deserve credit for making it what it is. I'm just the bearer of the torch, and I've sustained the tradition that we've had for many years. There's been 10 owners in 116 years, and I just happen to be lucky enough to be one of them.
Well, that's awesome, and I know that you posted on social media that if someone's ever in Fort Collins, Colorado, just to send you a message, you'll meet them right down at the bar. You'll have a drink. You'll share some laughs, share some stories. I mean, we've certainly enjoyed the laughs and the stories, and the heartfelt stories. Tonight on the live stream here. So we appreciate it, and hopefully someday, we can join you out there in Colorado for a cocktail at your bar. So thank you for sharing that story. We appreciate that.
Ideally,
Definitely.
that would prefer.
That would be really great. Anybody out there that's listening or watching, including you guys and everyone in between, if you're ever in Fort Collins, come by the Town Pump and let me know. Give me a day or two ahead of time so I have the night free maybe for my children, and we'll plan on grabbing a cocktail together on me.
See you next weekend. Sean and I are going to fly out there.
All right.
I'll
be home.
I get New Hampshire Outdoor Expo next weekend.
Yeah, bummer. We can sneak away for the night, right? Just fly away, fly back, and it'll be
fine.
Yeah.
I mean, Christ, I went up with Tom up to the St. Lawrence River, friggin' up there, fished for 2 days and back in less than 48 hours. It was great.
There you go. Yeah.
47 hours to be exact. You know what though, Jake? If you're coming to ICAST this year, I believe I'm going back again this year. So if you're there, we'll meet up if you can. Schedule allows. Drink is on me. Anything you want. Oh, you could probably tell me more drinks than anything.
Yeah, I may actually put my feelers out. I usually, when I go to ICAST, I'm usually helping an angler with their content, running around with the camera, just shooting sponsorship plugs or whatever. So I haven't talked to anyone. Last time I was there I didn't go last year, but the year before I was there with Kevin Van Dam, helping him out. And I don't know that I'm going yet this year, but I did think about that the other day. I need to put my feelers out, and if any anglers out there needing some help with their content, let me know. And all you gotta do is get me a plane ticket and get me to Orlando and put me up, and I'll do what I can to help.
There you go. Perfect.
Nice.
Okay, last one. I'm not going to pin it. I'll just bring it up because there was several people that, well, I didn't need to click that. Several people that brought this up. And, I mean, really, it's been a kind of mixed bag of what are your thoughts on it? And can someone please explain? So I guess collectively, and Jake, you can start, like there's the recent today disqualification of Scott Martin for the no information rule. And I remember when they first brought this up, and I don't remember where I saw the video, but it was Swindle talking about it, and he said that it's a really, really tough rule because there's such a extended period of time that this aspect of the no information rule is in effect, and it's tough because they know they have so many fans. All of these pros have so many fans, and people just want to come up to them and talk to them all the time, and they want to talk to them about their favorite place, and like they have to like stop them. Like you gotta be careful, because if you tell me something like this, then I can't, I'm disqualified. Like you cannot talk to me about it. And people just don't get it for a number of reasons, where they just straight up don't get it. They can't comprehend the significance of it, or they don't care, or they're just so excited to be talking about, to one of their favorite pros, especially one of their favorite pros coming to their home water, and they just want to talk about it. Like it doesn't click. They can't get past the excitement. They just start talking, and then that's what it sounds like what happened to Scott Martin. He was at the boat, getting prepped, getting ready to go out there for practice, and someone just came up and started talking to him, and before he could shut the conversation down, the guy had said something specific about Okeechobee, and at that point he had gathered information inadvertently and unintentionally, and he self-reported and was disqualified. I believe that is, as far as we know, the facts of the matter. But what is your take, I guess, on this rule and the challenges that it brings to the table on this?
That's a tightrope, man, and it's thin ice all at the same time, because like you said, everyone wants to help. Everyone wants to be a part of it. Everyone just, it gets overwhelmed with the stardom and the brand and the event and all that stuff. And you hear it all the time. I mean, like we were talking about Docs and Karens, more so than Karens, you've got people that don't know the rules or don't care or forget or whatever it is, and they come down and say something. It happens at almost every tournament when we're up on the bank fishing, particularly Docs. I would say that something like that happens at every event. And in fact, the boats that I'm in, it happens all the time. And so the most common response from the anglers is they stop immediately and say, "I can't get any information. Thank you so much, but please don't say anything else because I can't gain any information." So the thin ice is, how much did that person say, and you can't unhear it, and it wasn't your fault that someone came down to the dock and said something out loud, so it's not your fault that they did that. So where's the line between gaining information inadvertently and not? And so I think where the line is whether you react to that or not. Like the guy that was going to go fish the sunken lawn chair that he'd seen, it was in like 3 feet of water and clear water, and he saw the fish the day before in practice. He was going to come back and catch it. The guy walks down, he says that, so, and that we were live at the time, so he couldn't react to it because everyone saw that guy come down and hear him talk about that lawn chair underwater with a big fish by it. So the angler chose to just go around it and avoid it 100% so that there would be no controversy. What wasn't, he already knew the fish was there, and I could have been his alibi and said, no, he told me he was going to go fish for that fish. That guy came, but then who do you believe, and where is that line drawn? And the tournament directors, Chris Bowes and Lisa Talmadge, they can't enforce one rule or a rule with one person and then half-ass enforce it with someone else, because there's ambiguity in what that information meant and how it helped the angler or didn't help the angler and how they reacted to it. So it's almost like a DUI. The DUI levels are set for the smallest person with the least amount of alcohol that would impair that person's ability to drive or make decisions. And that's what these rules are designed to do, is to prevent the least amount of infraction in the biggest scenario, so that no one has an advantage based on information. Whether it's right or wrong, I'm just a camera guy, and I can't even make decisions. I mean, I get asked from time to time when there's a question. I remember when Cody Huff, he was spooning at Pickwick, and he was spooning those fish on that ledge. He was just fishing a ledge like they do on the Tennessee River system. And someone had suggested, I think on live or something, that he was snagging those fish because he had a spoon. It was a big spoon, and it had 2 different hooks on it, and that made it different than other spoons. And so I got questioned as to whether he had snagged any of those fish. And I looked at Lisa and Chris, both trust me in my judgment, and they know that I would never be a part of anyone violating a rule infraction, because I am the marshal. When I'm the camera guy in the boat, I am the marshal for that angler, whether it's Lee Livesey or someone that I've never even been in the boat with and I don't know from Adam. I'm the marshal, and I have to adhere to the rules. And specifically, even my friends know, they know that there's a fine line between my friendship with them and my job as a camera guy and a marshal in the boat. Specifically, even my friends that I'm in the boat with, they know that, and they literally have, they make it very clear that there's never going to be an infraction. And if there's any question whether they're bed fishing and the hook is right on the outside of the mouth in the outer exterior part of the mouth in the tissue, or inside the lip, they always ask me to film it before they get the hook out, so that everyone sees that fish was caught legally. And I've had them catch them barely on the outer tissue of their lip, literally unhook it and throw a 6-pounder back in the water, knowing that that was an illegal catch and they adhere to the rules. So, I'm sure there's a lot of ambiguity and lots of questions across the board with different anglers, and moments that you get caught up in. You're in Championship Sunday, and something happens, and I'm sure there's constantly ambiguity and people walking on thin ice. But I've never seen an infraction in a boat, and if I did, I would have to turn that individual in, and it would be a mutual agreement. And with Scott Martin, the fact that he turned himself in on his home lake, like I was with Scott last year when he won the Open on Okeechobee, and it was an unbelievable experience to be with him on that lake with Roland at the dock, his dad, the whole experience at Clewiston, at the Roland Martin Marina and all that stuff. It was an incredible situation. And when we got our assignment sheet earlier today, I was at the airport in Denver when we got our assignment sheet, and I looked down the list. I'm actually with Jason Christie tomorrow, if anyone cares. But I looked down the list and I said, that's really odd that we're not covering Scott Martin, because I thought they would have put me with him because I covered his win last year in the Open. And then all of a sudden it popped up when we got to West Palm Beach Airport. I took my phone out of airplane mode and I saw the social media post coming up, and I'm like, well, that would explain why we're not covering Scott Martin. So more than anything, I was heartfelt sort of heartbroken for him, because while he did turn himself in, that was the right thing to do. This is if there's anyone out there that has a real, truly true to life home pond, it's Lake Okeechobee and Scott Martin.
Yeah.
And with his dad's history here, and with the fact that he won last year, and the way that he did that, I know it's really disappointing for him not to be able to fish this tournament, and it took a lot of guts and a lot of gonads to turn himself in. But at the end of the day, had he done well in this tournament and someone found out about it, the defamation and personal suicide that you create for yourself when you don't follow the rules and you get caught is devastating to your career. And Scott Martin certainly is not one of those people that can afford to do that, nor am I questioning his integrity at all. I'm just saying, that it just can't happen. It's devastating to your career when all of a sudden you become in question because you cheated at a tournament.
Exactly. Yeah, no, that's
look what it did to those walleye guys, stuffing those walleyes full of weights. I mean,
but that's a whole nother story, right? Because like I have buddies up here, like I'm really good friends. I literally live 3 minutes down the road from a guy who literally got their lunch money taken by those guys in the walleye world. And I have got a great buddy, Craig Sleeman, who fishes the National Walleye Tour, and he fished against Chase and his partner and the whole 9 yards that were involved in that walleye scandal. And it's definitely not something that you want to be involved in. And, like these guys at Bass they're between a rock and a hard place, right? Like the same with you, right? You're an ambassador for the sport. Your integrity is on the line every single day when you go out there, and you got to do the right thing when no one's looking, right? Like that's what integrity is what do you do when no one's looking? Who are you when there's no eyes on you? And to always do the right thing, to be the bigger person, to fess up to something even when you're not sure that you violated any rules. That's a tough situation. That's a gray area that I don't envy anyone being in, and I'm sure it's a very difficult situation for them to be in. But when you look at Bass as a whole, Bass is the pinnacle of someone's fishing career. Bass is the top of Everest for every competitive bass fisherman, fisherwoman, kid angler that wants to go out and catch fish and do it in a competitive setting. And for Lisa and the other tournament directors and folks that put Bass on, that's a very difficult position to be put in, and not something that should be taken lightly. Like they have to make a decision for someone's success, for someone's failure, for someone's livelihood, for someone getting to fish next year, for someone getting to fulfill a lifelong dream of hoisting a blue trophy or whatever it may be. And these guys have to make the impossible decision on a daily basis and keep people honest and keep the sport and the integrity of the sport alive. And especially over the past couple of years, it's come into question, and it's been very, very difficult for them to toe the line and create a right and wrong, because there's been a lot of gray area, especially with advancements in technology and so on and so forth, right? So like it is almost an impossible job for them to do what they do. But they do it very, very well, and Bass remains to be, at the top of the game. So, it's definitely a tricky spot to be in for everyone. But we as the viewers appreciate everything that you do and the folks at Bass do to kind of keep the drive, keep the challenge, keep the competition alive. So thank you very much.
I think you have to keep in mind, as an angler or even a marshal or whatever level, if you're fishing club tournaments, not everyone has a marshal on the elite level at every event. At club tournaments, you might be fishing alone, and your integrity is all you have. When someone asks you, what's your goal in life, the real answer should be that, when I die, everyone that comes to my funeral or my memorial shows up and talks about how honest and how good of a person you were in life, and how much integrity you had. And one thing that I think everyone needs to keep in mind, and people like Michael Jordan and the greatest athletes within their own respective sports have always said is no one's bigger than the game. And if you look at it that way, then I think you can sustain your integrity, because if you've never won a blue trophy, you're 10 years into your career and you've got a chance and you catch a bedfish, and you happen to snag it on the outside of the mouth, you don't have a marshal in the boat, no one's watching, you could totally get away with it if you want to. Put that 9-pounder in your well and go win $100,000. At the end of the day, what have you really done? You cheated the system, you cheated your peers out of their money, you cheated yourself because it was illegitimate, and you think you're bigger than the game, or you let your greed and selfishness take over, and at the end of the day, that counters the word integrity. So, kudos to Scott Martin and for turning himself in. He probably didn't have to, but at the end of the day, if he didn't and he got caught, it would be tragic to his career, and it's just not worth it at the end of the day. So good on you, Scott Martin.
Yeah, agreed on that. Hopefully something can be, I don't know, I don't want to say addressed or changed, but maybe a meaningful conversation in the off season to see, can there be something done about that, so that situation like this doesn't completely DQ somebody out of it. I don't know how else you balance that. There might not be a better solution other than just, this is a learning lesson for all the anglers moving forward, where it's like, you have to be on the verge of being rude when somebody comes up to talk to you, just to be upfront, like, dude, don't tell me a thing. So that in such a manner that there is no question whatsoever to the person talking to you, don't tell me anything.
Well, it's tough too, because like you hear a lot of doc talk with the anglers, and like you're allowed to exchange information with the other Elite Series pros and stuff like that. But like anyone else on their boat, anyone else in their team, anyone else in their tribe and their family and whatever, like you can't say anything. You got to keep that under lock and key, and you can't do that. And so like the gray area becomes skewed when people are overhearing things, or in conversation, you hear two guys yucking it up and talking about stuff, and you just have to be a fly on the wall and keep your mouth shut. And that's difficult,
Yeah.
There's every situation so different, and the rules are designed. The big umbrella rule is you can't gain any kind of information that would give you an advantage in catching a legal bass in the tournament. So, if someone says something about a specific location, maybe that angler can just, hey man, I'm turning myself in. They told me not to go fish X point at such and such creek, and you avoid that location the entire tournament, so you don't get the advantage from that information. Or someone says, hey man, don't go north of the bridge, go south of the bridge, because that's where the big bite is. Well, that might be 58 miles of river or lake below the bridge that no one gave you specific information on where to go fish. They just told you to go left instead of going right. And yet it's still an infraction, because it was information that might lead to giving you the advantage in catching a legal fish on that day. So, man, there's just so many cracks in that ice that you could fall through. But to credit the design and the structure and the format of the tournament rules and the integrity of the tournament directors, you can't start splitting hairs, because all of a sudden one guy's going to come back and say, you let him get away with that, and this is no different. We're comparing apples to red apples to green apples here. Maybe not red apples to red
how
apples,
dark is the gray? How dark
hairs.
Is that color gray? Before you start.
You can't get into that, or you're going to be splitting hairs, and the integrity of the whole sport is going to go down the drain. So, they do the best that they can. I know Lisa really well, and I know Chris Bowes really well, and they're truly there to enforce the rules formatted for the events and the tournament, and everyone knows the rules. If you don't know the rules, that's your fault. They go over them, and even the manatee no wake zones at Palatka or between Palatka and Astor, it's phenomenally jacked up. Like some places, you might be looking up because there's two boats coming at you in an area that you can run, and you're looking at them, or you're trying to avoid something, or you're running through the fog, and all of a sudden you run halfway through a quarter-mile manatee no wake zone, and you're like, man, I just broke the rules. No one else saw me do it, and you go turn yourself in, and all of a sudden you get a 30-minute penalty the next morning for that infraction. Hey man, the rules are the rules, and you got to know where you are at all times, and you got to be situationally aware of what's going on, or you could inadvertently break a rule, but the rules are the rules, right?
Right. Yep.
It's just the way it is.
Very
That's integrity. Yep.
Oh, well, dude, I could sit here and talk to you and listen to all these stories for hours to come, but it's 10:10. This was been going on for over 2 hours now, which is insane. This has been the longest show we've had in probably like 2 years now. So I'm going to cut you loose. I cannot thank you enough for coming onto the show tonight. Like I really, honestly, I have to thank Sean for making this happen, because obviously you two know each other. I don't know you personally, well, before tonight. And, you know, I've been struggling with trying to even just keep up with the stream in the recent few weeks, months here. So really, I have to thank Sean for putting this together. And then again, thank you for coming on to do this, because this was an absolute treat, man. This was one of the best streams we've done in a while. And for me personally, it was insanely enjoyable, because I love hearing stories like this from behind the scene. So from the bottom of my heart, I really thank you for just coming on and sharing everything that you did tonight.
Well, thank you both for having me. Thank Tom, Smallmouth Freaks, for introducing Sean and I. And we shared an experience up at Clayton last year? Was it
Lake Champlain?
Yeah. I'm sorry, Lake Champlain. Yeah, at the Marina restaurant there, we had a table full of really cool people. Yeah, that was fun. But thank you guys for having me. Thank you for all the questions from the viewers. They're really interesting and very engaging, and it brings out the best in me to be able to tell some of these stories about all these anglers that everyone looks up to in the world, and they're all really great guys. So it's really easy for me to just regurgitate what I experience on the water with them.
Yep.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Jake. We'll definitely have to do this again in a different capacity with some different questions and different stuff, and maybe we can get Mercer and some other cool cats on here. You know, I'll talk to Kyle Patrick and some other guys and see if we can get some dudes on here to to really get kind of down and dirty here on the Elite Series. But no, it's been like Sean said, it's been a treat. So thank you very much for your time, and I know you've got a very, very long weekend ahead of you, but thank you on behalf of everyone for doing this.
Thank you so much. Looking forward to this weekend on Lake Okeechobee. There's going to be some big bags caught, and it's going to be a fun tournament. So everybody tune in.
Oh, I will be. That's for damn sure. Before you go, let everybody know where they can follow you on your social media if you want. No pressure for me, but I want to make sure you have that opportunity.
Yeah, Jake. It's at Jake_Latendresse on Instagram. That's where I'm most frequently in attendance. Some on Facebook, but you can always find me on Instagram. So definitely hit me up. Anytime I can ever do anything for anyone, answer questions or share stories, just hit me up in my DMs or in public, and we'll chat. Thank you so much.
Perfect. All right, man. Thank you very much. Everybody that's still watching, thank you all as well. Greatly appreciate everybody coming out and hanging out for the whole stream, especially a long one. I know a lot of you don't like staying up this late, but I appreciate the fact that you did. If you didn't do so before you go, please leave a like, whether you're watching YouTube, Facebook, doesn't matter. It helps immensely with the channel growth. Anybody that shared the stream when we posted it, like, you guys are the true heroes and rock stars of this, because I've said it before, I'll keep saying it again, that word of mouth is honestly one of the best ways to help any brand or business or whatever you want to call it grow. So for those that are doing that, thank you. Seriously, that means the most to me. So we'll see you all next week, 8 p.m. Eastern. As always, swimbait special. Sean lined up a bunch of guests for that as well. So we're going to have a loaded cast of people to talk all sorts of swimbaits, and we are truly represented by the North with this one because we've got
that's going to be awesome. We got coast to coast.
Coast to coast. We got New Hampshire to New York, Minnesota, and Washington. Did I get that right?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Next week is going to be epic. So we'll leave you hanging on the cliff for next week.
Yeah.
Let's not spoil it.
No, that's it. That's all we're going to say. All right, everybody. Thank you very much. Have a great